Welcome to our first PAVE virtual panel of 2022, The Road Ahead, USDOT's AV Policy and Priorities. During its first year, the Biden administration spotlighted several issues related to driving automation technology, from new crash reporting rules to warnings about the need for drivers to remain attentive while using driver assistance features. We are delighted to have the opportunity today to discuss some of those topics from the first year of the administration, as well as their goals and priorities for the year ahead. And central to our mission at PAVE, we'll also be discussing the importance of education and preparing for the autonomous future. My name is Tabitha Colter, and I'm PAVE's Director of Operations and today's moderator. I am honored to introduce today's guest, Lynda Tran. Lynda is the Senior Advisor for the Office of the Secretary and Director of Public Engagement at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Lynda, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Tabitha, it is my honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And we received dozens of questions from our audience who registered today. So we're going to do our best to cover a wide range of topics while we have Lynda here with us for the next almost 30 minutes. So Lynda, starting off a little bit. So President Biden's DOT has been quite active on automated vehicle related issues in its first year. We're hoping to dive into specifics there into the conversation. But broadly, what message do you want to send the industry about your approach to these issues and how it may be different from previous administrations?
Well, Tabitha, I would just start by saying that rather than compare to the previous administrations, I think that we should mostly focus on the vision that this secretary and this administration have set out. And of course, folks know, I'm sure many of the people who are tuning in from around the country paid attention to Secretary Buttigieg's remarks last week unveiling the department's innovation principles, which were the first of their kind. And, that was really designed to be a framework for understanding not only how the department thinks about things like automation, but also the role of technology in the world of transportation writ large. And so maybe that's actually a good place for us to start. Before we do that, though, it might be helpful for folks to know that this is not my first time at the Department of Transportation. This is actually, as I would describe it, my second tour of duty. My time as an appointee during the Obama administration, I was actually in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in NHTSA, and so it's been an amazing journey and an interesting perspective to see how things have evolved from now 11 years ago. Some of these very same topics, some of the same technology, but obviously a lot more interest and a lot of different players involved now than there were just over a decade ago. But big picture, just talking about the innovation principles. So the secretary unveiled them at the Consumer Electronics Show last week with 6 basic tenets in mind. The first one, which is the most important from my perspective, is really that the way that we view innovation and its role is to further our policy outcomes. And so not innovation for the sake of innovation, and certainly not innovation the way that sometimes the term is kind of bandied about as just the new cool thing and what folks should be thinking about if they want to sound cutting edge, but really that innovation has the potential and has, frankly, a proven record of really changing the way our communities operate, having substantial benefits for the people that live in our neighborhoods and in our cities and our neighborhoods in suburban and rural America as well. So first and foremost, innovation not as an end to itself, but to further policy outcomes. The second thing is really something I think of great interest to folks who are part of PAVE, who are tuning in, which is about innovation helping America win the future. That's the term that our secretary often uses in talking about the value and the benefit of innovation, making us more competitive, making us able to be more adaptable, resilient to some of the challenges that we face on a regular basis, whether that's from the climate perspective or otherwise. The third principle is really about America's workers. Not surprising to anybody who's been following the Biden administration and its priorities that it has laid out, is that it's very important to this president, is very important to the secretary, that as we embrace new technologies and new innovations, that we're not racing to the future just for the sake of racing to the future, and that we're also mindful of the technologies and the systems that are in place now that many people rely on to make a living. So really centering our approach to innovation around also just transition to the future. The fourth one is about allowing for people to experiment and also to fail, but to learn from those setbacks. And it's remarkable, I think, to have the federal government talking about trying and failing and starting again. But that is something that obviously has been very much a core tenet, a core principle for innovators and entrepreneurs for many, many years running. So certainly something that the Secretary has emphasized. The fifth one is just really about recognizing the opportunity for the three major sectors to collaborate and to partner on innovative approaches, innovative technology in the future. So not only focusing on the federal government, the public sector, but also the private sector, and also academia, the academic sector, and considering ways that we can do things like pilot projects together, and also to learn from the different efforts that are underway independently. Last but not least, and I would say that this is really important to underscore, too often the federal government is perceived as hard to move and kind of in stasis. And there's the Secretary made a important point that we have to be flexible and we have to adapt as technology adapts, so that we're not holding innovation to the standards that might have applied in the past, as things are moving and shifting and evolving very, very quickly.
Absolutely. That was a great overview of those principles. And,
so, I saw this not because folks haven't read about it, but just because it is a really good kind of roadmap to how we're thinking about all of the things that impact innovation and technology in the transportation sector.
Great, absolutely. Sorry, I think my audio got messed up for a second, but yeah, that's a great overview of those innovation principles. And I really liked a lot of the points you made about, not rushing to the future for the future's sake and having a just transition. And, obviously here at PAVE, we're focused on kind of a very specific aspect of that transition toward autonomous vehicles, namely public education. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how DOT is thinking about the role of education in governance of this emerging technology, and how you hope to kind of support that goal of public education going forward.
Well, look, as I said at the start, I'm a former NHTSoid, as we NHTSA folk like to call ourselves. And public education is part and parcel to everything that agency does. In fact, partnering with organizations like yourself and others in both the public and the private sector have been a core part of the NHTSA approach to making sure that people understand the programs that exist, the overall philosophy and the approach, and just making sure that the agency can translate its work into layman's terms in a way that makes it digestible to folks. And I would say that approach really applies to this department, DOT writ large, as well. A lot of what we are thinking about, especially as it pertains to the bipartisan infrastructure, now that that legislation has passed, and related to the immense upscaling of the resources available to the department, is about really kind of demystifying everything. Public education is so critical in terms of explaining to folks both the opportunities that are available, but also making Americans and communities aware of what the challenges might be, where there might be pain points that people should be aware of. And I would say nowhere is that more important than when it comes to describing our safety initiatives and safety practices that the department would really like folks to really keep in mind as they're going about their daily lives.
Absolutely. One trend that we're thinking a lot about at PAVE kind of coming into the next year is, it's easy to kind of think that AVs might be single passenger cars that drive themselves. And we are seeing that development, but we're also seeing this emergence of autonomous mobility in a wide range of services, trucking and transit, that are fundamentally different from cars. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how the department is viewing this variety of applications and while they're thinking about approaching this technology. Are we using the existing considerations to think about these other applications, or how do we need to rethink that?
It's a really, really good question, Tabitha. And I would just start by saying that ultimately communities need to decide what they want their transportation mix to be. They need to decide where the benefits and the costs are make sense for them, given the context of the people that live in their community. But I would start there, and I think that's kind of a general principle, whether you're talking about automation, autonomous or automated technologies. or any other component within the transportation sector. But it goes without saying that there is just so much exciting innovation, frankly, happening in the AV space, and that is true, as you point out, when it comes to transit. It is true when it comes to trucking. And from the perspective of the department, while folks are doing the experimentation, while folks are doing, some of that development, we're most interested in making sure that wherever it leads us, we're continuing to keep safety as our North Star. So, the Federal Transit Administration, for example, is doing some early, analysis and doing some partnering with other entities to do pilot efforts when it comes to transit automation. And then, similarly, our Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has been looking very closely at what's happening in the trucking industry. You can see, at the 30,000 foot level that there could certainly be some benefits in particular when it comes to transit automation, especially now as you and I are talking to each other in this weird two-dimensional world that we're living in, and in helping to keep folks safe during the COVID era. But certainly there are many potential applications far beyond what will hopefully be a soon ending pandemic.
Absolutely. And you're right on touching on, the supply chains that have been a big topic and sort of these rising trends we've seen. So great point. And you mentioned this as well earlier, but another topic we're really passionate about here at PAVE is encouraging positive and equitable societal benefits when we think about future transportation systems and technology. You mentioned, having conversations with communities, having them engage there. And Secretary Buttigieg has spoken about the potential promise of automated vehicles, including a quote last May when he referenced the great potential in particular for older Americans and those with disabilities. So what kind of steps do we, both the DOT and civil society more broadly, what do we have to take to ensure the technology delivers those benefits?
Well, Tabitha, I'm going to sound like a broken record on this, but of course, even as we're thinking about the potential, I'm always going to beat the drum on safety. And frankly, when you think about older Americans, when you think about folks who may be visually impaired, folks who may be physically handicapped or impaired, you can see that there is so much potential to expand the world and the ability for these folks to get around and to move about their communities and move about their daily lives with these advances that we're beginning to see in animation. The sky's the limit there. And I think that's really what the Secretary was referring to.
Yeah, I think that's right, to kind of tie accessibility to safety as well. I think that's an important link there. And again, it kind of in thinking about encouraging the societal benefits to broader communities and other groups, immediately after taking office, the Biden administration signed an executive order aimed at advancing racial equity in transportation and is soliciting comments on that issue. I'm curious, Lynda, where do AVs come into that move toward a more equitable transportation system? Specifically, are there actions we need to be taking to ensure AVs improve the equity of the American transportation?
Well, it's a very complex and large question, Tabitha, and I'm really glad that you're highlighting the administration's equity executive order. And in fact, very soon, we'll be releasing our own equity action plan that is responsive to that executive order. That will have a lot of different things in it related to the way that we want to make sure that we're centering all of the work that we're doing and considering, disadvantaged communities, considering things that the different perspectives, whether it's based on gender or it's based on, as we talked about a little bit earlier, people's physical abilities, as well as, of course, racial, socioeconomic status. So there's an ongoing discussion right now about how to make sure that we're centering our work in equity. That will be released pretty soon here, and that will continue to be engaging folks around. When it comes to automation, I mean, I don't think that the actual considerations are dramatically different in a lot of ways than the considerations for other modes of transportation. And the point being that part of it is calling out what it is, defining what a disadvantaged community is, thinking through what it would be like from that perspective. And another piece of it is really going to be an ongoing discussion, as I mentioned, because we want to make sure that we're actually hearing from folks with lived experience, hearing from folks who are in these communities telling us what it is that they see as the potential and what they see as those challenges as well when it comes to automation.
Absolutely. And you're right that hearing from those people is a key aspect of this conversation. And, it's one reason why at PAVE, we always try to, facilitate questions from our audience and bring them in. So one topic I'd love to hear your take on that we receive a lot is questions and concerns about cybersecurity and that level of safety. So is there anything you would like to tell us about what the DOT is working on in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity, my goodness, what a massive topic, and obviously one that touches on pretty much every part of our daily lives. We call out that the NHTSA team in particular has a very, very robust research program underway that is related to cybersecurity. And there were some best practices that the agency issued in 2016 that then were updated, and a draft form was put out in 2020. And those updated guidelines are being finalized right now. And NHTSA has also, as folks may know, been a driving force behind encouraging the industry's automotive information sharing and analysis center to share the information and intelligence that's collected on cybersecurity issues, and also importantly to collaborate on potential solutions to any issues that might arise. And then I would be remiss if I didn't plug the fact that NHTSA is also going to be at SAE next week, holding a workshop with federal and industry partners specifically on cybersecurity. So this is, a topic that is obviously top of mind for the department, and one that is a continual work in progress, and a place where the expert team is really very focused.
Great. We look forward to that SAE workshop and the ongoing efforts there. Great. And as we keep working towards this theme of having a transportation system that is more equitable to meet the needs of all communities, and thinking through the safety and those points there, I'd love to sort of turn to talking about the current transportation landscape. So, Secretary Buttigieg has made a number of statements on a specific issue that's pretty central to PAVE's mission: what technology is on the road today and what the human responsibility is while those technologies are engaged. His point culminates, and I'm going to quote him real quick, that I keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. Anything on the market today that you can buy is a driver assistance technology, not a driver replacement technology. I don't care what it's called. We need to make sure that we're crystal clear about that, even if companies are not. Lynda, could you tell us a little bit about why that statement was necessary and how DOT plans to continue building on that?
Well, again, safety is the agency's North Star, and the best possible way that the secretary can drive home the message that we are personally responsible for what we're doing when we're behind the wheel each and every single time is to really call that out. And I would certainly expect him to continue to do so. Just to peel back the onion a couple of layers here, part of what he was referring to in that comment is the difference between driver assistance, automated driver assistance technology, driver assistance systems that are available now, those level 1 and level 2 tech that you're seeing on a regular basis in vehicles, lane keep assist, collision warning, all of those kinds of things. That is very, very different than the hope and the dream of the level 3, level 4, level 5 automation, automated driving systems that don't really exist yet, and that there are various forms that are in testing and in demo and pilot projects, but that don't exist in a form that the consumer can yet purchase. And so just making clear to folks that regardless of how cool the technology is, and frankly, I remember, again, just over a decade ago, getting an early look at some of those neat driver assistance systems that are now just commonplace in the fleet. I remember thinking how neat and how impactful they were going to be. And also I remember what it was like for the first time to get behind in the back seat of a vehicle that was more in the category of what would be the autonomous vehicle that people are hoping to have on our roadways in a really substantial way in the relative near future. And the difference between those two sets of technologies is dramatic. And the point really is that we just really need to retain our personal responsibility based on what's currently on the roadway and what's available right now.
Absolutely. That's very well said, and a very important point, as you mentioned. Um, Similar to that sort of vein, one of the first major policies that was instituted by USDOT around driving automation tech this administration has been the introduction of new crash reporting rules, both for vehicles that are using driver assistance and for fully autonomous vehicles. Could you talk a little bit about DOT's goal for that rule and how that data you receive might ensure better governance of this technology and that principal safety that you have discussed?
Absolutely, Tabitha, and you're referring to the standing general order that that NHTSA issued not very long ago. And a big picture, what the standing general order requires is that both ADAS and the level 3 to level 5 systems that are being tested right now report the crash incident data and also smaller incident data. And the reason to do this, of course, is that NHTSA, the department writ large, but NHTSA in particular, is a very data-driven organization. And the agency is always looking for patterns within the data that it receives to see if there are potential safety concerns, if there's an unreasonable risk to safety in particular. That term I know is of great importance to a lot of folks. And the standing general order makes it possible that for the agency to get that information in relatively real time. It's required to be reported within 10 days, and so that it can look for patterns, it can look for areas that will require additional investigation or exploration to understand what the implications might be, again, on safety.
Absolutely. And, on the safety topic, in November of last year, actually, Secretary Buttigieg referenced the NHTSA safety probe into the Tesla autopilot system, and, saying that there is tremendous upside potential with autonomous driving and driver assistance, but it's not automatic. The computer systems are going to do better unless we have the right kind of regulation. Could you talk a little bit, both from your experience now and previously with NHTSA, about, potential examples or ideas of regulation that might help to ensure that these driver assistance systems are used as they're intended, with an alert human operator behind the wheel?
Yeah, and Tabitha, I would just say, because there is an open investigation, I'm not going to dive too deeply into that particular scenario. But what I would say is that, the role of the federal government, the role of NHTSA especially, but the role of the federal government writ large is really about making sure that there's, there is a standard set of guidelines, a standard set of requirements that people back from that innovation that we started this conversation talking about. So just making sure that the rules are the same for different folks, I think is really important. And also important is where there is a sense that certain approaches will ensure that people are safer, whether it's about regulating the type of technology that is put into a vehicle or some other different avenues there. Really just about making sure that there's a deep understanding of what's available, there's a deep understanding of what's the best path forward, and then making sure that that's something that the industry is thinking about as well.
Absolutely. And, as Director of Public Engagement, a lot of your work is kind of bringing together different stakeholders, the different perspectives, and kind of making sure that that's informing DOT's work in the future. So a common question we get that I'd love to just sort of hear your take on is how do those different players work together, the industry and the federal government and the states, and what sort of efforts are going on there for united paths forward as we think about this future of transportation and technology broadly?
So the short answer, Tabitha, is it varies dramatically. And
yeah.
I mean, it certainly depends on which sector we're talking about. It depends on whether in the private sector you're talking about large entities or small entities, and also where folks have decided to focus. I mean, some of the conversations that I've had recently have actually had nothing to do with human passengers and everything to do with the transport of goods. And of course, there's a lot of focus right now on the goods movement chain overall and potential ways of shoring it up for the future. I would just say that part of the reason why I decided to come back into federal service right now is that I fundamentally believe that when you have open and authentic feedback loops with individuals, external stakeholders, that really informs the work of the federal government. It makes everything that we do better. It makes us smarter about the landscape that we're operating in, about the potential opportunities for us to look at both things that might be a challenge, but also just to help amplify and lift up really cool things that are happening right out there. And so that's been really, really gratifying for me. And circling back to our whole conversation about equity, the other piece is that I'm super proud to be part of an administration where the concept, the value of equity is front and center. And I think that that's really quite groundbreaking. So it's part of the reason I'm here. It's part of what's exciting about public engagement. And also I would just put in the plug that, my door is always open to folks who have thoughts, have ideas, have feedback, have concerns or things that they want to highlight. That is something that I think is part and parcel of the DOT ethos, and certainly is one that I would welcome.
Absolutely, that's super important. And as we're wrapping up, we're getting really close to time, but I would love to sort of just end with, we've touched on so many different really important pieces as we think about the transportation landscape of the future. And I'd love to just sort of end with hearing, what are you most excited about in 2022? And within your work, I think you touched on it there a little bit, but I'd love to just sort of get your final take there of what you're excited about.
Tabitha, the secretary actually asked this exact question of his senior leadership team just a few days ago. And I told him then, and I'm telling you all now, I sincerely mean this. The thing I'm most excited about is conversations like this and the opportunity, hopefully in 3 dimensions in the relative near future, to just really interact with folks and to learn and to understand more of what's happening out there. At my heart, I'm an organizer, so I fundamentally believe in the principle of meeting people where they are, and that means you have to really listen and listen hard and to interact with people. My team has heard me say often, my job was not meant to be done in 2 dimensions. So, I'm really, really optimistic and hopeful about the time when we're able to be face to face again. But that's really energizing to me. And then honestly, and related to this specific conversation, it's exciting, everything that's happening right now at DOT, all around the world. I mean, people have clearly been deeply challenged and professionally and personally over the last 2 years in particular. But the silver lining of it is that we've also seen amazing advances in the way that people have adapted how they live their lives, the kinds of tools and technology and the way that people use things has really changed quite a lot. I mean, you and I are having this interview right now over Zoom, which was kind of a thing we used occasionally, before this period in time. And I'm just really excited to have a front row seat to everything that's going on and want to be a resource and helpful to folks as they're changing the way we live our lives.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our time together. But Lynda, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share your perspective with the audience.
Thank you, Tabitha.
And if you'd like to follow up with PAVE on anything discussed today, please reach out to us via our website contact form at www.pavecampaign.org, or just reply to your registration email. We will be posting the full video recording of today's session on our YouTube channel and our website later this afternoon. Follow us on your favorite social media platform at PAVE Campaign to see that as soon as it's released. And I'll end with a big final thank you to our audience for attending, submitting questions, and spreading the word. Thank you for engaging, and we really hope to see you at our panel next week when we'll be talking to PAVE's leadership about their perspective of the AV landscape in 2022. Thank you all, and thank you again, Lynda.